In the last episode, we created a cargo yard in this harbor. We also created a cargo yard in this piece of the Tallinn harbor. And we also added the tracks to this harbor. And of course, we also have this absolute monstrosity of a yard north of Tallinn in the harbor, and you can see how many tracks there are. It was quite a lot of fun to build, and you see how I expanded it, so this harbor is ready to use it. And with that, welcome to this episode of Nimby Rails. And before we start, this was definitely one of the episodes I hated to do. I upgraded my system to Windows 11 and OBS did not continue with the microphone settings, so I recorded over half an hour and I had no audio, so if this quality here is worse, I'm very sorry for that, because I have to make up everything I said and remember everything I said. Maybe that won't work, but let's start with actually adding the cargo tags and the proper colors to it. I thought about adding a brownish color. It took me quite a bit to actually find out which color is brown. I did not pay attention in art class, so it took me a bit to find out that orange is close to brown. And that's the color I want to use for all the cargo trains in this network. So, of course, speaking about the cargo tags, we also definitely have to add them to the other countries. Here and there I removed the country tag and replaced it with a cargo tag. I of course fixed that again, but stupid, silly mistake. And then I did the mistake again, but now we have cargo tags for all the countries that need it. So in future, if I don't want to do passenger rails, I can move in with cargo trains into the existing network, because there are quite a lot of cargo hubs and yards that I have built just for fun, so it looks better. And there are a few cargo yards that are huge that still need to be built, but this is the start, and today is the day where we test the first settings for cargo trains. So let's talk about the cargo network itself. We have quite a few good options, let's say it like that. Especially when we look up these tracks towards Tapa, they are double tracked. They are coming from Ylimisti all the way to Tapa, double tracked, so super easy to set up trains. Here at the station of Tapa we created probably a year ago by now. And then we have depots to the right, to the left, and continuing to the north and south single tracks. So the goal for now is to make sure that we actually have a cargo route running from Ylimisti all the way to Tapa, so that trains coming from Tallinn have an already set up route going into Tapa, and then later down the line I can create more routes coming from Tapa, for example towards Narva or down, I think Tartu it was. So yes, we have, of course, what we need to do is get the trains from these upper depots at the harbor of Tallinn to the main line. That will be the first goal of the route. Then from the Volta depot, put them onto the main line to Ylimisti, and then from Ylimisti to Tapa. So let's slowly get into that. So the very first task I set up myself is of course to clone one of the existing passenger depot lines setups, let's say like that, and rename it just to cargo, and then switch the tag over from depot to cargo. Spoiler, later I will put all the cargo depots back into the depot area and I only have the cargo runs as cargo set up. And then we have a lot of yards along the way. So there, for example, at Lagedi there was one, down the line later there will be more, and there we have a very easy setup. Okay, easy is of course relative. I used the lower two tracks to have routes towards Tapa for cargo trains. I tried to set it up as standard waypoints. I made the station down the line to make things easier, so that we then had Lagedi and Cargo Yard Lagedi, two different stations on the same tracks. And then you have one track dedicated for trains to Tapa to pull aside, one track for trains to Tallinn dedicated to pull aside, and then one track to serve the small cargo yard directly next to Lagedi station. Here you can see how I struggled with the warning sign and then later switched it over to a full station. Let's just skip that part because you know how to create a station. I was a bit confused because this test run was a bit chaotic and I felt for a moment that I forgot how to play Nimby Rails, but let's skip to the interesting part. So when I already talk about the more interesting part, let me talk about the outcome it had. I set up the entire route from this depot up here. I took the OpenStreetMap marker and just took it into the depot, and then I worked out all the depots. Okay, not all the depots, but most of the depots all the way to Tapa. So we then as well have Volta, the depot, right next to the tram tracks. I only use the back part where we then can store cargo trains, so not the front part yet. I will rework that depot, not rework it, extend the depot to have more parking spaces and set up the signaling for the rest of the area. Then of course we have Ulemiste, and we have it twice. Once we have it westward, so you can see all the arrows showing to the left, and then we also have the eastwards one where all the arrows show to the right, so that I can set up trains facing into one or the other direction. And at Tallinn WC depot we had the same, one westward, one eastward, just so that I can set them up a little bit better. We have Lagedi. Of course, we already just set it up and I reworked it to be a proper station. And then the only one missing, I believe, is Tapa. And there it's a bit difficult to set up the routing. I started with having an east and an westward again. So Tapa East and Tapa West. And you already know how it works. Trains arriving, for example, from Navar can then pull into the westward tracks and continue their journey towards Tallinn. And trains coming from Tallinn going to Tartu or Navar, for example, can then pull into the eastward tracks and then continue their journey towards the east. One thing I made sure to include is moving the stop markers around. So you can see it there, that the trains are not stopping parallel to each other, but that they are stopping a little bit offset if there will be a time where two trains are in the depot at the same time. So after setting up Tapa Depot, it is of course time to choose a train. Choose a choo-choo, and I haven't downloaded the mod of it yet, but I want to use my own mod, and it's the very first time in this YouTube series that I use my own mod. You can see source is local, not downloaded from the workshop, but taken right from my PC, and it's the Estonian loco, okay, the Soviet Union loco CHME3. I just enabled it in-game, and then when we go to the custom trains, EE for Estonia, CHME3 for the type, and I wanted to use two of them to have a loco train, so two trains that are just being transferred from Tallinn harbor to Tapa and back. That was my goal as the first train to test things out. I decided to run the light blue livery. I right now think it's Il Taure or something like that, the company that's actually operating them, and I chose one clean aesthetic and one dirty aesthetic. That's what my locos are coming with, especially the cargo ones, the diesel ones, not the cargo ones, the diesel ones, one dirty and one clean. And my goal is super simple. Start them from the depot out there and then bring them through, hopefully without stopping, and let them make their way all the way to Tapa. I then created a new line and I named it 3000. Why 3000? CHME3, the loco train I had, I also named it 3000, so the run is also named 3000. I gave it the brownish color so that it fits in with the cargo theme. Later down the line, there's also 3001, but I don't want to get ahead of myself. So I set up a stop in the harbor. So you can see it here where the signal is, there the locos will be parked. And then I want to pull them out and have a stop time there of 5 minutes for the person to stop the train, get out, walk to the other side, get in, start up the train again, and then depart. Simple as that. And then we set the train up to run through the yards. I set up a stop there that's absolutely not needed, another one that's absolutely not needed. I don't know what I was doing there. Then I set up another one that's also not needed. The only stop I need is actually inside of this section I'm zooming in right now, and there I have to choose which tracks I want to have all the trains running through, and then I will block off the other tracks and have parking spots there for the trains. So very simple. Here I removed all the stopping points except of course the 5-minute stop block time that is needed. I then chose track number 3 to be the one where I want to route all the trains through. Maybe I will switch that later to not only have track 3 but 2 and 3, so 1 inbound, 1 outbound. And then relatively simple, I can just set up the next stop point where I want to end the train. So here the tracks inside Tapa, that's where the train is supposed to be parked. And then I looked up where I can route it through, and my decision was to just straight up send it to this track. And for the moment I thought, that's it, easy, done. I then added 2 more points to the route so that I can also have the train or the trains from other depots use this route. So maybe I can later send cargo or full cargo trains down this route from other depots and then to end at Tapa. So maybe run 3000 and later down the line run 3001 are not only used by this loco but by all the locos running between Tallinn and Tapa. So I of course already spoiled it, but here's the moment where I decided to set up all the cargo yards as actual depots. So let's switch their colors to the grayscale. Why did I do that? Because having a full brown schedule looks weird with a little bit of gray. So I decided to also in the text section remove them from cargo and put them into the depot section, and not only name them depot, but in that case cargo depot, so that the cargo yards, the cargo depots actually are different from what passenger trains use, and I also give them different names and different styles. So here you can see the schedule. It looks beautiful in gray, and I only gave it 4 runs. So twice a week it runs from the harbor to Tapa and then back on Mondays to Wednesday and Thursday, Friday. There are 2 runs so far. I will add more runs later down the line, but this is only to test the waters between Tallinn main station and Tapa. So let's go to the 2 locos and give them the cargo run. I then remove the unassigned run and it works. So let's skip to the part where this train actually runs to see how good this worked out. So this is the moment of truth. We have the train sitting in the depot, and you can see the difference between the cleaner one and the more dirty one already from the sideboards. I believe that's what I want to call them. And let's skip the time a little bit. In this re-recording, I of course already know what will happen. I set up the line wrong. Boom. The train disappears. Yes, I set up the line, you can see it here, to black hole. That is not supposed to happen. I want them to wait on the platform. So now we have to wait until they reappear. I just ignore the issues everywhere else in the network for now. I did a few mistakes, let's say it like that, but I will talk about that more in the next episode. Yeah, then the train reappears. So let's jump onto the train itself and skip the time a little bit where it runs down the single tracks. The first interesting part is close to Volta Depot, because you can see it here. We have a place where the tram tracks and the cargo tracks cross each other, and we got lucky that the cargo train fits perfectly in front of it, because the tram has to stop at the station so it can sneak through. then running through the yard towards Tallinn main station, and there it has to wait because we need to switch to the tracks towards Tapa. That means that we have to cross the tracks that go to Paldiski and the train that was inbound from that direction, because I don't know which station exactly it came from. We needed to let it pass. I later down the line fixed that with giving the train plus 5 minutes, and that also removes the next issue that that the train is about to face, and you can already see it. There is a passenger train right in front of it. And the train only does 95 kilometers an hour, but a train that is doing 120 kilometers per hour but has to stop relatively often is not faster. So that were the only issues on this test run. But besides that, this test was a full success. So I am quite happy that the groundwork is laid for more cargo trains on the route from Tallinn to Tapa. And at that I want to leave it. Or at that place I want to leave it because this test so successful, and I believe that I will spend the weekend adding cargo trains before I then record for next Tuesday. So thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next episode. Then there won't be a CHME3 chasing the passenger train, but everything set up fine. And yes, I already talked too much again. See you in the next episode of Nimby Rails on Tuesday, and have a nice weekend. Bye bye, and thank you so much for watching and supporting.